Hello, and welcome back to the Sleep Alchemist. Tonight, we are going on a longer journey together, a journey under the soft, knowing glow of the harvest moon into the heart of the countryside. We will explore 3 separate lives, 3 quiet corners of the world, and 3 secrets that were never meant to be shared. Before we begin our journey, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely find a sense of peace here. And in the comments, I would love to know where in the world you are listening from tonight. It's always a quiet joy to see our community of listeners gathering from all corners of the globe. Now, find your comfortable space, dim the lights, and let your breath slow to the rhythm of the night. Our first story begins in the warmth of a stable. The rain has a memory of its own. Tonight, it speaks of storms from 50 years ago. It drums a steady, familiar rhythm on the tin roof of my small cabin, a sound that has become the anthem of my solitude. Outside, the world is a churning chaos of wind and water, the great pine trees swaying like dark giants in their sleep. But in here, there is peace. The only light comes from the stone fireplace, where a hearty log of oak crackles and spits, casting a warm, dancing golden glow across the room. The light catches the worn patterns on the old armchair where I sit, the patchwork quilt thrown over my legs, the spines of the books that line the walls like silent, patient friends. My world has grown smaller over the years, contained now within these 4 sturdy log walls on Whisperwind Ridge, and I am content with that, most nights. Tonight, however, the storm seems to be stirring something more than just the trees. It's a certain kind of loneliness, not a sad one, but a deep, nostalgic ache. It's the kind of night that calls for ghosts. My cup of chamomile tea is nearly empty, its warmth fading in my hands. My gaze drifts to the corner of the room, to the old sea chest that has sat there for as long as I've lived in this cabin, and on top of it, a smaller box, a simple, unadorned wooden box made of dark cherry wood, surface smooth and cool to the touch. I have not opened that box in a decade, maybe more. Some memories are like embers. It is safer to let them lie dormant than to risk rekindling a fire you can no longer control. But tonight, the sound of the rain is a persistent whisper, a gentle urging. My old bones protest as I rise from the chair, the familiar chorus of creaks and groans, my body's own private symphony. I walk over to the chest and lift the wooden box. It is not heavy, but it feels dense with the weight of years. I bring it back to the chair and place it on the small table beside me. The latch is made of simple, tarnished brass. My fingers, now spotted with age and stiff with arthritis, fumble with it for a moment. It opens with a soft, tired click. I lift the lid. The first thing that greets me is a scent, a ghost of a scent, faint but unmistakable. It smells of dried flowers, of old paper, and of a perfume that has not been made in over 40 years. It is the smell of her. It is the smell of Clara. My heart gives a familiar, painful squeeze. It is not a fresh wound, but an old one, a place that has healed over, but remains tender to the touch. My hand sifts through the contents. A smooth grey stone from a riverbed, a silver locket that will not open, a bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon, and beneath them, a photograph. I pick it up. The edges are soft and curled. The surface has a fine network of cracks, a spiderweb of time. It is a photograph of a young woman, no older than 20, laughing under the brilliant sun of a long-forgotten summer. Her hair is a wild mane of dark curls, and her eyes, even in this faded black and white, sparkle with a light that I thought could rival the sun itself. Clara. The photograph is a key, and turning it in the lock of my memory, the years fall away. The rain outside fades, and I am no longer an old man in a quiet cabin. I am 22, full of foolish, boundless hope, and I am standing once more under the hot, hazy sun of the summer of 1972. It was at the annual county fair, a small, chaotic celebration of summer at the edge of our small town. The air was thick with the smell of popcorn, cut grass, and the sweet, sticky scent of cotton candy. A local band was playing on a makeshift stage, their music slightly out of tune, but full of a joyful, unbridled energy. The world felt simple then. It felt bright. I was there with friends, trying to win a stuffed bear at a rigged ring toss game, laughing and complaining. And then I saw her. She was standing by the lemonade stand, arguing playfully with the vendor. She was wearing a simple yellow sundress, and her hair was tied back with a blue ribbon, the same color as the one now tying her letters in my box. She was not the most beautiful girl I had ever seen, but she was the most alive. When she laughed, it was not a polite, delicate sound. It was a full, throaty laugh of pure delight, a sound that made people turn and smile with her. And in that moment, the noisy, colorful world of the fair seemed to fade into the background. There was only her, a beacon of light and laughter. I was a shy boy then, but something, some force I could not name, pulled me forward. I walked over to the stand, my heart hammering against my ribs. I remember thinking of a dozen clever things to say, but when I got there, all I could manage was, "That lemonade, is it as good as your laugh?" She turned to look at me, surprised. Her eyes were the color of warm honey. She smiled, a slow, brilliant smile that made my world tilt on its axis. "It's not," she said, her voice teasing, "but it's close." That was the beginning of everything, the beginning of a love story that would become the foundation of my life, a story I now keep locked away in a small wooden box, a story I only visit on rainy nights like this one. My hand, the hand of an old man, trembles slightly as I place the faded photograph back into the wooden box. The smiling face of the girl in the yellow sundress disappears once more into the shadows of the past. For a moment, the cabin feels profoundly empty, the silence heavier than before. The memory was so vivid, so bright, it was like opening a window on a sunny day, only to have to close it again against the encroaching night. My fingers, acting of their own accord, drift through the other mementos in the box. They brush against the smooth, cool surface of a river stone, the brittle edge of an old postcard. Then they stop. They have found something impossibly delicate. I lift it carefully into the warm light of the fire. It is a flower, or what remains of one, a single mountain daisy, pressed flat between two pieces of waxed paper a half-century ago. Its petals are nearly translucent now, their once bright white faded to the color of old ivory. Its golden center is a dull, dusty brown. It is a ghost of a flower, so fragile I fear my own breath might turn it to dust. But as I hold it, the scent of hay and rain in my cabin fades away. In its place, I can smell the sharp, clean scent of pine needles, the rich perfume of damp earth after a summer shower, and the wild, sweet fragrance of a mountain meadow in full bloom. The calendar in my mind flips forward a year from that first meeting at the county fair. It is the summer of 1973, the summer we thought would never end. That was the summer we spent more time in the mountains than we did in the town. We were young, we were in love, and we felt invincible. We believed that all we needed was a tent, a map, and each other. We would pack a small bag with bread, cheese, and a bottle of cheap wine, and we would walk for hours, leaving the small, predictable world of the town behind us. The memory that this small, faded flower unlocks is of one particular trip. A weekend we spent camped by a high mountain stream. I remember the hike up, the sun warm on our backs, the comfortable silence between us punctuated by easy laughter. I remember the way Clara would stop to marvel at the smallest things, the intricate pattern of a spider's web, the deep blue of a wild berry, the way the light filtered through the canopy of leaves overhead. She taught me how to see the world, not just look at it. We found the perfect spot by a stream whose water was so clear it looked like liquid glass tumbling over smooth, grey stones. We set up our small canvas tent together, our hands often brushing, our movements a clumsy but happy dance. Later, as dusk began to settle, we built a small campfire. The sun bled a final, glorious streak of orange and purple across the sky, and we sat on a fallen log, watching the first stars begin to appear. The fire crackled and hissed, a living creature in the growing darkness. It was our only light, our only warmth. It danced on Clara's face, making her eyes sparkle like the honey they resembled. We shared the bread and cheese and drank the cheap wine straight from the bottle, passing it back and forth. It tasted better than any fine wine I have had since. Everything tasted better then. Everything felt more real. As the night grew deeper and the air colder, we retreated into the small, enclosed world of our tent. Zipping the canvas flap shut felt like sealing ourselves off from the rest of the universe. The world was reduced to the two of us, the soft, golden glow of a single lantern and the immense listening silence of the ancient forest outside. A light rain began to fall, a soft, rhythmic patter on the canvas roof above us. It was a sound of absolute peace, a sound that made our small shelter feel like the safest place on earth. We bundled together inside a single, thick sleeping bag for warmth. This is the heart of the memory. This is the moment the flower remembers. Lying there in the quiet darkness, the world outside disappeared. There were no jobs to go to, no families to please, no futures to worry about. There was only the present, a present made of small, perfect sensations. The feeling of the rough wool of the sleeping bag against my skin, and the impossible softness of her skin against mine. The scent of her hair, a mix of sunshine and the wild daisies she had tucked behind her ear earlier that day. The sound of her breathing, a soft, steady rhythm that synced with my own. The sound of the rain, a gentle drumming that washed away all other noise. She traced a line with her finger from my shoulder down my arm, a simple, idle gesture. But in the charged silence of the tent, it felt like she was writing a secret story onto my skin. I took her hand in mine, her fingers slender and cool. I studied the lines on her palm in the dim lantern light, as if it were a map to a world I desperately wanted to explore. "What are you thinking about, Jack?" she whispered, her voice a warm murmur in the cool air. I was thinking that I had never felt so completely at home in my entire life. I was thinking that I could happily live out the rest of my days in that single moment. But I did not say that. I was a young man, and such feelings were too large, too frightening to be put into words. Instead, I just said, "I'm thinking that I will never be this happy again." She grew quiet for a moment, then she shifted, propping herself up on one elbow to look at me. The lantern light caught the side of her face, her expression serious and tender. "Don't say that," she said, her voice soft but firm. "This isn't the end of happiness, Jack. This is just the beginning." And then she leaned down and kissed me. It was not a frantic kiss of youthful passion. It was slow. It was deliberate. It was a kiss of profound and gentle certainty. It was a promise of more mornings, more journeys, more nights like this one. In that kiss, I could taste the wine we had shared, the faint saltiness of the mountain air, and the sweet, undeniable taste of a future I believed would last forever. Her hand came up to cup my cheek, her touch gentle and sure. I felt a lifetime of loneliness I didn't even know I was carrying simply dissolve. We didn't say anything more after that. There was nothing more to say. We simply lay there, listening to the rain on the tent, our bodies a warm island in the cool, dark night. Her head found its place on my chest, and I could feel the soft puff of her breath against my neck. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her as if she were the most precious, fragile thing in the world. And in a way, she was. We both were. Young, full of hope, and completely unaware of the storms that life, much larger than the one outside our tent, had in store for us. I remember falling asleep that night with a smile on my face. My last waking thought, a simple, perfect one. She is here. I look at the dried flower in my old, wrinkled hand. Its color is gone. Its life is gone. But the feeling of that night is still as real as the warmth of the fire on my face. It was the beginning, and she was right. It was not the end of happiness, but it was, perhaps, its highest peak. A moment so perfect that the rest of my life has been lived in its long, beautiful shadow. My fingers, thin and papery now, gently place the pressed daisy back into its small, waxed paper coffin. I fold the paper over it carefully, as if tucking a child into bed. The sweet, phantom scent of that mountain meadow fades, replaced once again by the familiar smells of my cabin. Old wood, wood smoke, and the damp earth carried in by the storm. The warmth of the memory remains, but it is a distant warmth now, like the last embers of a dying fire. a beautiful, perfect moment, preserved under glass. My hand drifts through the box again, a blind archaeologist excavating the ruins of a past life. It brushes past the smooth river stone, over the bundle of letters tied with their sad blue ribbon, and then my fingers close around something hard, cold, and unyielding. I lift it out. It is a single key. It is not a beautiful object like the flower. It is heavy, made of common iron, and its edges are softened with a fine layer of rust that comes off like reddish dust on my fingertips. The teeth are worn from turning a lock 1,000 times. This is not a key to a treasure chest. It is a key to a life. Our first life together. Holding it, the coldness of the metal seems to seep into my bones, and the cabin around me dissolves. The sound of the rain on the roof is replaced by a different kind of drumming, the constant, chaotic, and wonderfully alive sound of the city. The key was for a small apartment on the 3rd floor of a brick building in a city that felt, to a boy from the mountains, like a different planet. After that summer of hiking and camping, after another year of stolen weekends and long-distance letters, we had decided we could not bear the distance any longer. So I had followed her. I had followed her to the city where she was attending university, where her dreams were taking flight. I remember the day we got this key, the sheer, unadulterated joy of it. The apartment was tiny, the paint was peeling, the floors creaked, and the single window looked out onto a brick wall of the neighboring building. But to us, it was a palace. It was ours. It was the first place that was truly, completely ours. We had almost no furniture. A mattress on the floor, a wobbly card table, and 2 mismatched chairs we found on the street. But we filled it with other things. We filled it with books stacked high against the walls. We filled it with the smell of brewing coffee in the morning and cheap pasta at night. We filled it with the sound of her laughter and the constant, hopeful scratching of my pencil in my sketchbook. And at night, we filled it with the sound of our dreams, whispered to each other in the dark. Those first years were a continuation of the mountain's magic, just transplanted into a world of concrete and steel. Our intimacy was not just in stolen kisses, but in the shared, simple rituals of a life being built together. It was in the way she would put a fresh cup of coffee on my desk without a word when I had been drawing for hours. It was in the way I would have a warm meal waiting for her when she came home, exhausted from her classes. It was in the quiet comfort of reading, side by side on our mattress on the floor, our shoulders touching, 2 separate worlds of paper and ink, existing peacefully together in the small pool of light from a single lamp. The love was still there. It was the foundation of everything. But foundations, I have learned, can be shaken by the slow, inexorable shifting of the ground beneath them. I was a man of the mountains. I craved silence, open spaces, the smell of pine trees. The city, which had at first seemed so exciting, slowly began to feel like a cage. The constant noise of traffic, the sirens, the shouting of neighbors. It was a ceaseless assault on my senses. I would find myself standing at our small window, not looking at anything, just listening. Listening for a sound that wasn't there. The sound of wind in the trees, the sound of a river, the sound of silence. I tried to capture it in my drawings. My sketchbooks from that time are filled with towering, lonely trees, vast, empty landscapes, and small, isolated cabins, just like this one. I was drawing a life I was not living. I was drawing a home my heart longed for. For Clara, it was the opposite. The city was her element. It nourished her. She was brilliant, and for the first time in her life, she was surrounded by people who saw and appreciated that brilliance. She thrived in the university's demanding environment. She loved the energy of the streets, the endless supply of museums and theaters, the promise of opportunity that seemed to hang in the very air. Her world was expanding, growing brighter and larger every day. And mine was shrinking until it was contained within the four walls of that small apartment. The first real crack appeared on a quiet Sunday afternoon. It wasn't a fight. Fights are for people who still have the energy to shout. This was something quieter and far more dangerous. She was excitedly telling me about a new program at the university, an opportunity to study abroad for a semester in Florence. Her eyes were shining, her voice full of a passion I had not heard in a long time. She spoke of the art, the history, the language. I was sitting at the table, sketching. It was a drawing of a cabin. This cabin. That's wonderful, Clara, I said, and I meant it. I was truly happy for her. Imagine all the things you'll see. We'll see, she corrected me gently. Imagine all the things we'll see, Jack. I stopped drawing. I looked at the half-finished sketch of the cabin, with its porch and its stone chimney. I don't know if I can live in another city, I said, my voice quiet. I don't think I am built for them. The light in her eyes dimmed, just a little. It's just for a few months, Jack. It's the opportunity of a lifetime. My lifetime, I said, looking out the window at the brick wall, is happening somewhere else. It's on a mountain, by a stream. I can feel it, even when I'm here. She didn't get angry. She just sat down across from me, her hands folded on the table. The silence between us was no longer the comfortable, intimate silence of our tent in the mountains. It was a new silence, a silence filled with the weight of two different, diverging futures. I love you, she said, her voice soft. But I cannot be small, Jack. I have spent my whole life in a small town, with small dreams. The world is finally opening up to me. I want to see it. And I love you, I replied, my own voice thick with a sadness I couldn't hide. But I think my world has been too large for too long. I just want to make it smaller, small enough to fit on one patch of land, small enough to be peaceful. It wasn't that we stopped loving each other. I think, in some ways, we loved each other too much. We each wanted the other to have the life they dreamed of, and we slowly, painfully, began to realize that those dreams did not share the same sky. The key in my hand feels heavier now. It was the key to our first home, yes, but it was also the key that locked us into a world where one of us would always be a stranger. We tried. For another year, we tried. But the silence between us grew. It was no longer a space of shared peace, but a chasm of unspoken truths. We were two celestial bodies, once held together by a powerful gravity, now slowly, silently, drifting apart into separate orbits. The iron key feels cold in my palm, a cold piece of a past that was once so warm. It was the key to a home, but a home is more than just walls and a roof. A home is a shared direction, and our directions, Clara's and mine, had begun to point towards different horizons, towards different skies. I gently placed the key back amongst the other ghosts in the box. My fingers, almost against my will, continue their search, brushing past the river stone, past the soft, brittle petals of the mountain daisy. They search for the final artifact, the one I dread, and yet the one that makes the story complete. My hand closes around it. It is an envelope. The paper is no longer white, but a deep, creamy yellow, like aged ivory. It is brittle at the edges, and I handle it with the care of a man touching a sacred relic. On the front, my name, Jack, is written in her beautiful, familiar script. The ink has faded from black to a soft, watery brown. The seal has been broken only once, on a lonely night many years ago, and then carefully resealed. I don't need to open it again. I know its contents by heart. The words are carved into my memory just as surely as my name is carved on the old tree down by the stream. Touching this letter does not just bring back a memory, it brings back a single day, the last day, the day the music stopped. The memory is not of a storm, but of a quiet, grey afternoon in our small city apartment. The air was heavy with unspoken words and the sad, practical smell of cardboard boxes. We were packing, or rather, she was packing. Her books, her clothes, her life. I was just there, a silent witness to the gentle dismantling of our world. There had been no final, dramatic fight. The battles had all been fought in the quiet, weary conversations late at night over the preceding months. The war was over, and we had both lost. What remained was the sad, necessary business of signing the treaty. She folded a sweater and placed it carefully into a trunk. Her movements were slow, deliberate, graceful even in this final act of separation. "You know," she said, her back to me, her voice soft but clear in the quiet room. "I found a photograph the other day from that camping trip in the mountains, the one where it rained." "I remember," I said, my voice sounding rough, foreign in the silence. "You said that was just the beginning." She stopped folding and stood still for a moment. "I believed it was," she whispered. "With all my heart, I believed it." She turned to face me then. Her eyes, those honey-colored eyes that I had fallen in love with, were not filled with anger, but with a profound, bottomless sadness. It was a sadness that mirrored my own. "Oh, Jack," she sighed, walking over to where I sat on a stack of books. She knelt in front of me, taking my hands in hers. Her hands were so warm. "Don't you see? It was the beginning. It was the beginning of something beautiful and real. But stories, real stories, they have middles and they have ends. They aren't meant to stay in the first chapter forever, no matter how perfect it was. Our story doesn't have to end," I said, the words feeling foolish even as I spoke them. She smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "Doesn't it? Look around you. You built this beautiful, silent world in your sketchbooks. A world of mountains and trees and quiet cabins. You draw it every day because it's where your soul lives. And my world is out there. She gestured towards the window, towards the endless roaring symphony of the city. It's in the libraries, the lecture halls, the possibility of Florence, of Paris. I can't live in your beautiful silent world, Jack. It would be a cage for me. And you are slowly dying in mine. She was right, and the truth of it was a cold, hard stone in my stomach. Love, I was learning, was not a magical force that could conquer all. Sometimes love was about having the courage to admit that two people could be perfect for each other, but perfect for each other at the wrong time, in the wrong place. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone go so they can find their own sky. The intimacy of that moment was almost unbearable. It was not the warmth of a shared sleeping bag or the passion of a stolen kiss. It was the intimacy of two souls laid bare, with no pretense, no defenses. It was the intimacy of a shared, heartbreaking truth. She saw the pain in my eyes. She squeezed my hands. This is the hardest thing I will ever have to do, she said. And I saw a tear, a single tear, trace a path down her cheek. The same path I had seen another tear take so long ago in a stable during a storm. It isn't a goodbye, she continued, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. It's just a different kind of love now. A love that wants the other person to be whole, even if it means being apart. She stood up and pulled the sealed envelope from the pocket of her dress. She placed it in my hand. Don't read this now, she said softly. Take it with you. When you've built your cabin, the one you're always drawing, on your mountain, read it then. Read it on a rainy night, by a fire. Read it and remember that what we had was real, and it was beautiful. And then she did the hardest thing of all. She let go of my hands. She turned, picked up her single suitcase, and walked to the door. She paused, her hand on the knob, but she did not look back. Be happy, Jack, she whispered to the door. And then she was gone. The sound of the door closing was not loud, but it was the loudest sound I have ever heard. It echoed in the sudden, deafening silence of the empty apartment, a silence that was no longer filled with her laughter, her music, her presence. It was just empty. I hold the letter in my hand now, here in the cabin she told me to build. Its seal is still mostly intact. I did read it, that first lonely winter here, just as she asked. It was not a letter of explanation or apology. It was a letter of thanks. Thanks for the laughter, for the adventures, for the quiet moments, for the love. It was her way of giving me back my own memories, a gift I have treasured ever since. This key, this flower, this photograph, this letter. They are not ghosts that haunt me. They are the foundation stones of the man I became. Her love did not break me. It built me. And her leaving gave me the freedom to finally come home, to this quiet place on the ridge, a place she knew I needed, even if she could not share it with me. The final, most painful, and most generous act of her love. The letter rests in my hand. The paper is so fragile, so thin with age, I feel as though a single, careless breath could turn it to dust. For a long time, I just sit here in my worn armchair, feeling the weight of it. It is not a heavy weight. It is the weight of a life lived, of a love that was real. The storm of memory has passed. The chaotic, passionate, joyful, and painful moments have all been revisited, like ghosts invited in for one night. Now, the house is quiet again. My heart is quiet again. It is time to let them rest. With a gentleness I did not know my old hand still possessed, I place the letter back into the cherry wood box. It settles onto the bottom, a final, silent word. Next, I pick up the cold, iron key. The key to a life we tried to build together in a world that wasn't right for us. A symbol of both a beginning and an end. I place it beside the letter. They belong together. Then comes the flower, the small, pressed mountain daisy, a ghost of a summer where we believed we were infinite. I lift it carefully, its petals as thin as a dragonfly's wing, and lay it to rest on top of the key, a memory of wild, untamed nature placed upon a memory of the city's confines. Finally, the photograph. The first memory I summoned tonight. The laughing girl in the yellow sundress, her eyes sparkling with a light that could outshine the sun. I look at her face one last time. I do not see the sadness that would come later. I see only the joy of that single, perfect moment, and I smile, a real, gentle smile. I place the photograph on top of the pile, her bright image covering the story of its eventual, inevitable end. I close the lid of the box. The sound is not a loud, final thud. It is a soft, satisfying click, a sound of completion, a sound of peace. I slide the box back into its place in the corner, back into the shadows, where it will wait patiently for the next rainy night, many years from now perhaps. The cabin feels different now. The ghosts have departed, leaving behind not an emptiness, but a quiet, profound sense of presence. The air feels lighter. I lean my head back against the worn fabric of the armchair, and I simply listen. The storm has truly broken. The drumming on the roof has softened to a gentle, rhythmic patter, a sound so soothing, so constant, it feels like the heartbeat of the earth itself. It is a sound that washes the world clean, washing away the sharp edges of memory, leaving only the soft, rounded shape of what was. The fire in the hearth has died down. The roaring flames that fought against the storm are gone. In their place, a deep bed of embers glows with a soft, pulsing red light. It is a gentle, breathing warmth now, a warmth that does not demand attention, but simply is. It fills the room with a sense of safety and profound calm. Now and then, a log shifts, sending up a small, whispering hiss and a brief flurry of orange sparks that disappear into the darkness of the chimney. I look around my small cabin, at the books on the shelves, their spines a testament to 1,000 other lives I have visited, at the simple, hand-carved furniture I made myself, at the patchwork quilt on my bed, stitched together from pieces of old shirts and blankets, each patch a story in itself. This is the life I chose. the life she knew I needed, a life of quiet, of solitude, of peace. For many years, I thought this cabin was a monument to what I had lost. But tonight, I see it differently. It is not a monument to loss. It is a testament to a love so strong, it gave me the courage to let it go. It was her final gift to me, the freedom to build the life that was truly mine. A profound sense of gratitude washes over me, gentle as the rain outside. Gratitude for the joy, for the passion, even for the heartbreak, because every moment, every laugh, every tear carved me into the man I am today. A man who can sit alone in a cabin on a rainy night and feel not lonely, but whole. Some stories are not meant to have a happily ever after. Some stories are like a magnificent, intense firework, lighting up the sky for one brilliant, breathtaking moment before fading back into the night. But the memory of that light, the echo of its beauty, remains forever. Our story was like that, and it was enough. It was more than enough. My thoughts begin to slow now, their edges softening, blurring into the sounds of the night. The fire, a soft red glow, a gentle pulse. The rain, a whisper on the roof, a steady, soft rhythm. The warmth of the blanket on my legs, the weight of my head against the chair. The world shrinks to just this room, this moment, this peace. My breathing deepens, sinking with the soft patter of the rain, in and out, a slow, gentle tide, letting go, drifting. The memories are fading, leaving only the quiet, the warmth, the dark. Time to rest, time to sleep. And so, the first secret is kept, safe in the heart of the stable and in the memory of a boy who saw a love he was not meant to see. But secrets are not only held in the shadows of barns. Sometimes they are carried on the wind across open fields, whispered across the boundaries that divide us. Let us leave the scent of hay and horses behind now and travel across the moonlit fields to another soul, another life bound by the rhythms of this same great estate. Let us listen for a promise that was never meant to be heard. My apartment is quiet now. It is a stillness that only a lifetime in a noisy city can teach you to appreciate. The sun has begun its slow descent over the Hudson River, and the light that filters through my large old window is the color of weak tea, a soft, golden amber that paints long, gentle stripes across the wooden floor. It is a photographer's light, a light for remembering. In my lap rests a simple cardboard box, its corners softened and frayed by the passage of more than 40 years. It has no markings, no labels. It doesn't need any. I know its contents by heart, by scent, by the very weight of the memories held within. I lift the lid, and the scent rises to meet me, a ghost from another era. It is the faint, sharp, chemical tang of darkroom developer fluid, a smell I once associated with creation and magic. It is mingled with the dry, sweet scent of aging paper and something else, something that smells like forgotten music and rainy city nights. My hands, now wrinkled and marked with the liver spots of age, tremble just slightly as they sift through the chaotic stacks of black and white photographs. They are not neatly organized in albums. They were never meant to be a tidy, chronological history. They are a jumble of moments, a mosaic of a life I once lived, a life that belonged to a different version of me, a girl with sharper eyes and a faster heart. My fingers stop on a particular photograph. The paper is thick, a good fiber-based stock I favored back then. The corners are slightly bent from years of being shuffled and revisited. It is a picture of a jazz club in the village, probably taken around 1976 or 77. The image is grainy, imperfect, full of the beautiful flaws that film forces upon you. A thick cloud of cigarette smoke, a permanent feature of any indoor space in that decade, hangs in the air like a low-lying fog, catching the hot, direct light from a single stage lamp. In the photograph, the smoke looks almost solid, like a divine mist. You can almost feel the sticky floor under your shoes, almost hear the clinking of glasses and the low, constant murmur of conversations rising and falling like a tide. And there, on the small, cramped stage, is the reason the photograph exists. A young man, his eyes closed, his cheeks hollowed with effort, his entire soul seemingly poured into the gleaming brass of the saxophone pressed against his lips. His name was Samuel. I remember the first time I saw him. It was before this photograph was taken. I was 23, a fledgling photographer armed with a second-hand camera and a fierce, unspoken ambition to capture the raw, beating heart of the city. I was drawn to the jazz clubs downtown, to their dark, subterranean spaces where real, unfiltered emotion was on display every night for the price of a cheap drink. I went there to work, to be invisible, to hunt for that one perfect, fleeting image of truth that a camera could steal from time. And then I heard his music. It was not like the others. The other musicians played notes, they played melodies, they played with a technical skill that was admirable but left me cold. Samuel played feelings. His saxophone did not sing. It wept. It did not dance. It yearned. It did not shout. It confessed. It was the sound of 1,000 lonely walks home in the rain, of a sudden, unexpected joy on a crowded subway platform, of a deep, aching desire for something just out of reach. It was the sound of New York itself. That first night, I remember lowering my camera. You do not take a picture of a prayer. You simply listen. You let it wash over you. After his set, I found him at the bar, nursing a glass of whiskey, looking just as lost and exhausted as his music sounded. He seemed smaller off the stage, the energy that had filled the room now contained within his slender frame. I, who was usually so bold, so confident behind the safety of my lens, felt suddenly shy, exposed. I walked over, my heart hammering a nervous rhythm against my ribs. I remember thinking of a dozen clever, artistic things to say about his phrasing, his tone. But when I stood beside him, all that came out was the simple truth. "Your music," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "It tells the truth." He turned to look at me, and his eyes were dark and tired, but deep within them, there was a spark of something I recognized. It was the same fire that burned in me, the fire of the observer, the artist, the person who stands just slightly outside the world, watching, feeling, trying to translate it all into something beautiful. He gave me a slow, weary smile. "It's the only truth I know," he replied, his voice a low, gravelly hum, like the last notes from his saxophone. And that was it. That was the beginning of our story. A story told in smoky rooms and on rain-slicked streets. A story of two young, hungry artists. A story captured in the black and white images now resting in my lap. My fingers sift through more photos, past stark portraits of strangers and abstract cityscapes, until they find another one. This one is different from the others. It is not sharp or well composed. It is slightly blurry, a candid shot, a happy accident. It was taken in our first apartment, a tiny, impossibly cluttered space above a bakery in Greenwich Village. In the photo, we are laughing, genuinely, uncontrollably laughing. I remember the moment perfectly. I had set the timer on my camera, which was perched precariously on a stack of books. I wanted to take a serious, pensive portrait of us, the artist and his muse, something dramatic and full of shadow. But just as the camera's timer clicked, he whispered something utterly ridiculous in my ear, and the carefully constructed facade of seriousness shattered. I had thrown my head back in a silent, joyful laugh, my hair a wild mess. He is holding me, his own smile wide and real, his eyes crinkling at the corners. The photo is out of focus because we were moving, because we were alive, because the moment was too real to be held still. Looking at it now, I can smell that apartment. It was a symphony of scents, the constant, comforting aroma of baking bread and pastries that drifted up from the bakery downstairs, a smell that forever defined home for me. That sweet smell was always mixed with the sharp, acidic tang of my photographic chemicals from the makeshift darkroom I had set up in our tiny bathroom, and underneath it all, the smell of old books, of which we had hundreds, stacked in every corner, on every surface. The apartment was our island, our fortress against the vast, indifferent city. It was where he composed his music, the mournful, beautiful notes of his saxophone filling the small rooms late into the night, a private concert for an audience of one. It was where I developed my photographs, watching with a kind of holy reverence as images slowly, magically emerged from the chemical bath, like ghosts taking form. I remember the dim, ruby-red glow of the safe light, casting a strange, intimate light on our faces as we worked side by side in the dark, two alchemists of our own making. Our life was a beautiful, chaotic dance. We were poor, but we never felt it. Our currency was not money, but inspiration. We lived on cheap red wine, on conversations that lasted until the first hint of dawn, on walks through the city at 3 a.m., and on a shared, fierce, unwavering belief in each other's art. He believed my photographs could capture the soul of the city. I believed his music was its voice. And in that small, cluttered room, we found our own kind of intimacy. An intimacy that wasn't just of the body, but of the creative spirit. It was the intimacy of him playing a new, unfinished melody for me, his eyes searching mine for a reaction. It was the intimacy of me showing him a fresh print, still damp, and watching him see the world through my eyes. I remember one night in particular. A winter storm was raging outside, a blizzard that had shut down the city and wrapped our little apartment in a cocoon of profound silence. The world outside was a whirlwind of white, but inside it was warm and still. The only sound was the soft, persistent crackle of the old vinyl record he had put on the turntable, a slow, scratchy waltz. He had been staring out the window, watching the snow fall. I was on the floor, organizing my negatives. He turned to me, a slow smile spreading across his face. He walked over and extended a hand. "May I have this dance, Miss Evelyn?" he asked, his voice low and teasing, a mock formal bow accompanying the question. I laughed and took his hand, and so we danced. There was no grand ballroom, no shimmering chandelier, just the two of us in our worn-out sweaters and thick socks, swaying together in the small, clear space between the stacks of books and the record player. His hand was warm and firm on the small of my back, a steady anchor in our small, spinning world. My head found its natural place, resting on his chest. I could feel the deep, steady rhythm of his heart, a beat that felt more real, more vital than the music itself. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The city lights were muted by the falling snow, creating a soft, diffuse glow through the window. The record crackled and popped, a comforting, nostalgic sound. And we just held each other, moving as one. A silent conversation between two souls who had found their home, not in a place, but in one another. That, I think, was the most intimate we ever were. It was a moment of perfect, unspoken peace, a moment of safety and belonging that I have never, ever forgotten. A photograph taken not with a camera, but with the heart. I continued to look through the box of ghosts. My fingers, almost hesitant now, brush against a different kind of photograph. It is not a candid snapshot. It is a formal portrait, an 8:10 print on heavy, professional paper. It's of Samuel. I took this one a few years later, in the small studio space I was finally able to afford. He is not smiling. He is not laughing. He is looking away from the camera, towards a window just out of frame. His face is thinner, sharper, and there are lines of exhaustion around his eyes that I had not seen before, lines that even my careful lighting could not hide. The spark of the artist is still there, but it is a more troubled, more distant fire now. This photograph marks the beginning of the next chapter, the chapter of success, and the chapter of Thang Tram, the ups and downs. His music had been discovered, the raw, beautiful truth that I had first heard in that smoky downtown club was now being heard by others. It led to better gigs, to reviews in the papers, to a record deal. It led to tours. First, small tours up and down the East Coast. Then, longer ones across the country. I was proud of him, so incredibly, fiercely proud. But his absence created a silence in the apartment that even the city's constant hum could not fill. He would return, smelling of different cities, of train smoke and stale hotel rooms, and the faint perfume of strangers. He would be full of stories of the road, of the energy of the crowds, of new music born in lonely motel rooms. And I would show him the photographs I had taken, the quiet, solitary moments of city life I had captured while he was away. We were still two artists sharing our work, but now we were sharing it across a growing distance. Our art, the very thing that had brought us together, was now showing us the different paths we were on. Our arguments were never loud. We were not people who shouted. They were quiet, heartbreaking disagreements whispered late at night after the wine was gone and the silence became too heavy to bear. He spoke of the road, of the necessity of movement, of the freedom of not belonging anywhere. He said the music demanded it. I spoke of roots, of building a life, of a home, of a stable, quiet place from which our art could grow and deepen. You capture moments, Evelyn, he told me once, his voice full of a sadness I couldn't soothe. You are a master of the still frame. You freeze time, and you find the universe in it. But I have to live in the flow of time. I have to keep moving with it. That's where the music is for me, in the change, in the motion. But where is home, Samuel? I asked, my own voice trembling with the weight of the question. Where do we rest? Where do we put down our roots? He looked at me, and in his dark, tired eyes, I saw the truth. For him, home was the music itself. It was the road. It was the next city, the next club, the next song. And my home had become him. And he was never truly, fully there. We were two artists in love with our art and in love with each other. But we were learning the painful lesson that those two loves could not always live in the same house. The key in my hand from our first apartment now felt like a key to a cage. The final memento in the box is not a photograph. It is a small, faded, rectangular piece of cardstock. A train ticket, a one-way ticket to Chicago, dated October 1981. I don't need a picture to remember that day. It is etched into my memory with a perfect, painful clarity that no lens could ever capture. The old Penn Station was loud, cavernous, chaotic. The air smelled of steel and steam and departures. We stood on the platform, surrounded by the rush of strangers, yet completely alone in our own bubble of quiet sorrow. The final moments of our story were ticking away with the station's enormous clock. There were no tears, not then. There were no final, dramatic fights. We had said all we needed to say in the quiet, sad nights that had led to this inevitable moment. This was a parting born, not of a lack of love, but of a love that was not enough to conquer two fundamentally different dreams, two fundamentally different souls. He held my face in his hands, his fingers cool against my skin. You'll be a famous photographer, Evelyn, he whispered, his voice full of a genuine belief that almost broke me. You'll have shows and galleries all over the world. And you'll be a legendary musician, Samuel, I replied, my own voice steadier than I felt. They'll write books about your music. We hugged, a long, final embrace. I breathed in his scent one last time, trying to memorize it. I could feel the familiar, steady beat of his heart against my cheek. And then he let go. It was the hardest thing, the letting go. He picked up his heavy saxophone case, turned, and walked towards the train without looking back. He knew, as I did, that if he looked back, he might not be able to leave. I stood there on the platform and watched until the train was just a small, dark shape disappearing down the tracks, taking a part of my world, a part of my youth, with it. The letters came, at first, long, beautiful letters full of stories from the road. Then they became less frequent, a postcard from New Orleans, a short note from St. Louis, and then a gentle, respectful silence. Our love didn't end with a bang. It just faded out, like the final, lingering note of a saxophone at the end of a long, sad song. I placed the ticket back in the box on top of the photographs, and I closed the lid. The sun has set now, and my apartment is filled with the deep velvet blue of twilight. The city outside is a glittering, indifferent tapestry of a million lights, a million other stories beginning and ending. I do not feel bitter. I do not feel regret. I feel a deep, profound sense of peace. Our story did not have the ending I had dreamed of when I was a young girl, but it was a complete story. It was a beautiful story. It taught me about love, about art, and about the quiet courage it takes to let someone go so they can follow their own music. I get up from my chair and walk to the window. The sounds of the city, the distant, melancholy wail of a siren, the low hum of traffic, the faint sound of laughter from a neighboring apartment are a new kind of music now, a new kind of lullaby. I look at the reflection of my own face in the dark glass, an old woman with white hair and eyes that have seen a great deal, and I am content. The memories are not a burden. They are my collection, the most precious photographs I have ever taken. My thoughts begin to slow now, to soften. The sharp edges of the memories blur, losing their painful clarity. The face of the young man with the saxophone, the sound of his music, the feel of his hand in mine, they all begin to drift, to merge with the gentle, constant hum of the city, a quiet harmony, a peaceful rhythm, a soft, gentle fade to black, a deep and final silence. The fog is a familiar blanket this morning. It rolls in from the sea, thick and grey, and smelling of salt and damp stone. It muffles the world, softening its sharp edges, turning the familiar coastline into a landscape of ghosts and whispers. To some, it is a gloomy presence. To me, it is a comfort. It is the privacy of the ocean. My name is Silas, and for 50 years, I was the keeper of the light at St. Jude's Head. Now, I am just the keeper of its memories. My daily ritual, now that I am retired, has not changed much. I wake before the sun. I make a strong, black coffee that could strip paint, and I walk the beach. The sea and I, we are old friends. We understand each other's silences. My boots make soft, deep impressions in the wet, packed sand near the water's edge. The air is cold, and I pull the collar of my old, thick wool coat tighter around my neck. The sound of the waves is a constant, gentle shh, a sound that has been the soundtrack to my entire life. It is a sound of immense power and profound peace. I walk with my head down, my eyes scanning the tide line. The ocean is generous. It always leaves gifts for those who know how to look. My life is a collection of these gifts. A gnarled piece of driftwood that looks like a sea serpent, a sailor's knot, impossibly tight, washed ashore from a wreck long ago. A lobster trap, its wood worn grey by the relentless water. Each object tells a story, but the stories I look for on my own. This morning, my eyes catch a glint of colour amidst the grey stones and dark seaweed. I bend down, my old knees protesting with a familiar chorus of cracks. I pick it up. It is a piece of sea glass, worn smooth and opaque by a century of tumbling in the surf. Its colour is a deep, soft blue, the colour of the sea on a clear summer's day. I hold it in my palm. It is cool and smooth to the touch, a perfect rounded shape. And as I look at it, the grey fog around me seems to dissipate. The chill in the air is replaced by a remembered warmth. The sound of the waves is joined by the phantom sound of distant laughter. Because this piece of glass, it is the exact colour of her eyes. It is the colour of Lena. She arrived in a summer that felt different from all the others, the summer of 1975. Our small New England fishing town usually had its share of summer people, city folk, who came for the lobster and the quaint scenery. But Lena was not one of them. She was not a tourist. She was an artist. She arrived not with suitcases, but with a large wooden easel, a canvas roll, and a box of paints. She rented the small, weathered cottage at the very end of the lane, the one that everyone said was haunted by the ghost of a fisherman's wife. She didn't seem to mind. I saw her for the first time on the main pier. I was mending a net, my hands performing the familiar, intricate dance of knots and loops. She was sitting on the edge of the pier, her bare feet dangling just above the water, sketching the fishing boats in a charcoal pad. She was different from the town women. Her hair was a wild, dark cloud, untamed by the sea wind. She wore a simple, paint-splattered dress, and her face was one of intense, focused concentration. She wasn't looking at the town as a pretty picture. She was looking at it as if she was trying to understand its soul. She must have felt me watching, because she looked up, and her eyes met mine. They were the color of this piece of glass in my hand, a bright, clear, impossible blue. I, who had spent my life in conversation with the sea, suddenly found myself without words. I just nodded. She smiled a small, curious smile, and then looked back at her sketchpad. But a connection had been made. A silent thread had been cast across the distance between the steady, quiet lighthouse keeper and the wild, free-spirited artist. Later that week, she walked the long path up to the lighthouse. I was polishing the great lens, a task that required all my attention. It was my sacred duty. The light had to be pure, strong, unwavering. She stood in the doorway of the lamp room for a long time, just watching me work in silence. "It's beautiful," she finally said, her voice soft against the sound of the wind outside. "It's a machine," I replied, my voice rough from disuse. "It just does its job." "No," she said, stepping into the room. "It's more than that. It's a promise in the dark." And that was how our conversations began. She would visit me at the lighthouse, asking questions no one had ever asked me before. Not about the weather or the fishing, but about the light, about the loneliness, about the stories the sea told me in the long, dark nights. And I, in turn, would ask about her art. She tried to explain color and form and how she tried to paint not what a thing looked like, but what it felt like. We were two people from different worlds, speaking different languages. But somehow, in that high, lonely tower, we understood each other perfectly. I placed the smooth, blue piece of sea glass into the deep pocket of my coat, its coolness a comforting weight. I continue my walk, the memories now a warm current flowing alongside the cold Atlantic tide. My boot nudges something half buried in the sand. I stoop down and pull it free. It is a piece of driftwood, long and slender, its surface worn so smooth by the sand and salt that it feels like polished bone in my hands. Holding it, I can almost feel the heat of a fire on my face. I can almost smell the scent of pine and burning salt. The memory it unlocks is the warmest of all. It was later that summer, the summer of Lena. By then, our friendship had blossomed into something deeper, something unspoken, but undeniable. One clear, star-filled night, I took her to my secret place, a small cove hidden by high, rocky cliffs, accessible only at low tide. It was a place I had never shown another soul. We gathered driftwood from the tide line, our hands brushing as we worked together in the gathering dusk. We built a small bonfire in the center of the cove. As night fell, the fire became our entire universe, a circle of warmth and crackling, golden light, holding back the immense dark silence of the sea and the sky. The fire danced, casting flickering shadows on the cliff walls behind us. The sound of its crackling and popping was a lively counterpoint to the deep, rhythmic crash and sigh of the waves just feet away. We cooked fresh fish I had caught that day, wrapping them in seaweed and burying them in the hot coals. We ate with our fingers, the salty, smoky taste of the fish mingling with the cool, crisp taste of the wine she had brought. After we ate, we sat close together on an old blanket, watching the embers of the fire glow like a dragon's heart. The sky above us was a breathtaking spectacle. With no town lights to compete, the Milky Way was a brilliant, shimmering river of light, stretching from one end of the horizon to the other. "I've never seen so many stars," she whispered, her voice full of awe. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Her hair smelled of the sea and the faint, clean scent of turpentine from her paints. "The sea and the sky," I said, my own voice a low rumble. "They put on a good show when they think no one is watching." We fell into a comfortable silence, a silence that was no longer new or tentative, but deep and familiar. It was the intimacy of two people who no longer needed words to understand each other. I could feel the warmth of her body through my thick sweater. I could feel the gentle rise and fall of her breathing. Then she took my hand, my large, rough fisherman's hand. She didn't just hold it, she turned it over, and with the tip of her finger, she began to trace the lines on my palm, as if she were reading a map or learning a new language. It was the most intimate gesture I had ever known, a quiet exploration, a gentle acceptance of every line, every callus, every scar that life had carved into me. I looked at her. Her face was illuminated by the soft, warm glow of the dying embers. Her blue eyes were deep and serious. "What story does it tell, Silas?" she asked softly. I thought for a moment, looking at our hands joined together. "It tells a story of ropes and nets and cold, lonely nights," I said. "Until now." She looked up at me, and her smile was a small, secret thing, a gift, just for me. Every story needs a new chapter, she whispered, and she leaned in and kissed me. The kiss was as soft as the fog and as salty as the sea. It was a kiss that tasted of wine and wood smoke and a deep, shared loneliness that was, in that moment, no longer lonely. I brought my other hand up to her face, my thumb brushing against the smooth curve of her cheek. The world, with all its noise and all its rules, disappeared. There was only the sound of the waves, the warmth of the fire, the taste of her lips, and the overwhelming, breathtaking feeling of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in my life. We stayed there for hours, talking in low whispers as the fire burned down to glowing coals. We shared secrets we had never told another soul. We shared fears about the future and dreams that felt foolish in the daylight, but felt real and possible here, in our small, secret kingdom by the sea. I wrapped the blanket around both of us, a small, shared warmth against the vast, cool darkness of the night. Her head found its place in the hollow of my shoulder, as if it had always belonged there. I remember falling asleep like that, to the sound of the waves and the steady, peaceful rhythm of her breathing, feeling a sense of contentment so profound, so complete, that it almost felt like a kind of pain. The driftwood in my hand now feels warm, as if still holding the memory of that fire. I place it gently into my coat pocket, next to the piece of sea glass. A fire and a color, the beginning and the peak of a perfect, impossible summer. I continue my walk. The fog is beginning to thin, and the sun is a pale, white disk behind the clouds. The tide is turning, beginning to recede, revealing new treasures on the wet sand. My foot nudges something small and white. I pick it up. It is a seashell, a whelk, with a beautiful, swirling pattern. But as I turn it over in my palm, I see that its delicate tip is broken off, leaving a sharp, jagged edge. And just like that, the memory shifts. The warmth of the bonfire fades, replaced by the first, sharp chill of autumn. The end of the summer came not with a bang, but with a slow, undeniable change in the light. The golden, hazy days of August gave way to the crisp, clear, and melancholic light of September. The crowds of summer tourists thinned, then disappeared entirely, leaving the town feeling quiet, empty, and a little sad. The vibrant colors of Lena's paintings began to change too. The bright blues and yellows were replaced by the muted grays and browns of the autumn sea. The comfortable silence between us also began to change. It was no longer filled with unspoken understanding. It was filled with the weight of an unspoken question. What now? We were sitting on the end of the pier, the same pier where I had first seen her. The wind was colder now, and we both wore heavy sweaters. The fishing boats bobbed in the choppy grey water. My fellowship ends next month, she said, her voice quiet, her gaze fixed on the horizon. I have to be back in the city. There's a gallery show I've been offered. I knew this day was coming. I had known it from the beginning, but knowing something and feeling it are two different things. I just nodded, my own gaze fixed on a distant boy. The city, I said. The word felt foreign, like a name from a country I would never visit. You could come with me, Silas, she said, turning to look at me, her blue eyes full of a desperate hope. You could paint. You have an artist's soul. I see it. I looked at my hands, the calloused, rope-scarred hands of a man who belonged to the sea. I looked at the lighthouse, my lighthouse, standing tall and steadfast on the cliff behind us. It was more than a building to me. It was my post, my purpose. I don't know how to breathe anywhere else, Lena, I said. And it was the simplest, most painful truth I had ever spoken. My soul is made of salt and fog. It would wither in the city. She looked down at her own hands, slender and stained with paint. And mine, she whispered, mine would wither here. I need the noise, the people, the struggle. It's what I paint. We sat there in silence for a long time after that. There was no argument, no blame, just the heartbreaking adult realization that love, no matter how deep or how true, cannot always build a bridge between two completely different worlds. Sometimes, love is just a beautiful shared island in time, and eventually the tides that brought you together will pull you apart. I stop my walk now, and I look back at my own footprints stretching behind me on the wet sand. I see a small wave, larger than the others, roll in and wash them away, leaving the sand smooth and unmarked, as if I had never been there at all. And that, of course, brings back the final memory. The day she left, it wasn't at a grand train station. It was at the small, dusty bus stop at the edge of town. The air was cold and smelled of coming winter. She held a single, small suitcase and her roll of canvases. We didn't say much. What was there left to say? We had said it all in the quiet, sad weeks leading up to this. "You're right?" I asked, my voice sounding hollow. "All right," she promised, "and I'll be back next summer." We both knew it was a kind lie, the kind you tell when the truth is simply too heavy to be spoken aloud. She stood on her toes and kissed my cheek. It was a cool, brief kiss, a ghost of the kiss by the fire. "Thank you, Silas," she whispered, "for the summer." Then the bus arrived, a large, noisy machine that seemed out of place in our quiet world. She got on and found a seat by the window. She did not look at me. She just looked straight ahead. I stood there, on the side of the road, and watched as the bus pulled away, carrying the only bright color my world had known. I watched until it was just a small shape disappearing over the hill, and then it was gone. The letters came, at first. Long letters, full of the sights and sounds of the city, full of the excitement of her gallery show. I would read them in the lamp room of the lighthouse, her words a small, warm flame against the vast, dark sea. I wrote back, my letters full of the simple news of the town, of the changing tides, of the winter storms. But our worlds were too different. Her letters became shorter, less frequent. Mine did too. The silence grew between us, not a silence of anger, but one of sad, inevitable distance. Until one day, the letters stopped altogether. Her summer was over, and so was ours. I stand on the beach now, an old man. The fog has completely lifted, revealing a calm, grey sea under a pale sky. The tide has fully receded. I look down at my coat pocket. It is heavy with the treasures the sea has given me today. A piece of blue glass, a piece of smooth driftwood, a broken shell. The sea brought her to me, and the sea took her away. It is the way of things. It is the rhythm of the tide. I do not feel bitterness. I do not feel regret. I only feel a deep, quiet sense of gratitude for the beautiful, fleeting gifts that one summer tide brought to the shore of my life. I turn and begin the slow walk back to my cottage. The sound of the waves is a constant, gentle companion at my side. The day is just beginning, but for me, it is time to rest. My thoughts begin to slow. The sharp, clear memories begin to soften, their edges blurring like sea glass. The blue of her eyes, the warmth of the fire, the sound of her laugh, they are all still here, not as painful ghosts, but as gentle, sleeping currents beneath the surface of a calm sea, a quiet tide pulling me gently out into a deep and peaceful sleep. Some people, like the tide, come into our lives for only a season. They bring with them unexpected treasures, and when they leave, the shoreline of our heart is forever changed. Thank you for walking this misty beach with me tonight. I hope this story has brought you peace and a quiet moment of reflection. May your rest be as deep and as peaceful as the ocean at dawn. Sleep well.